Today, we have some really interesting guests with us, and we're going to focus on discussing how each and every one of us actually can take action and contribute in this decade of action. We need to cut carbon emissions with 50% by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050. It's a huge challenge. We need everybody on board, and today we're going to learn from some really thought-provoking leaders in this field on what they've done and what they do to actually help engage you, me, everyone. We're going to talk about impact transparency, carbon labeling, and how to engage the broader community and customers and consumers everywhere. My name is Helena Müller. I'm co-founder of Doconomy, and I'm leading the rollout of our index solutions globally. And I'm really happy to have this panel with me here today. And I thought I'd hand over to each and every one of you to introduce yourselves, your title, and the company that you represent. Jay, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jay Buckfinder from Amico. We're a furniture manufacturer in Hanover, Pennsylvania. I'm on product development, but really leading the charge for sustainability right now in terms of carbon transparency and labeling.
Thank you. And Jad?
Hi, I'm Jad Fink, and I have the privilege of leading innovation and sustainability at Allbirds. We are a lifestyle brand, footwear and apparel with a New Zealand heritage, founded in California with a clear mission to make better things in a better way. And we've recently launched a carbon labeling system on every single one of our products so the customers can know the environmental impacts of the products they buy.
Wow, thank you. And Mats, please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mats Landén, working for WGF Sweden, where I manage some of our bigger partnerships with global companies around primarily climate, but also water stewardship. And I also have a background in fast-moving consumer goods, which I think could be useful for this conversation.
Awesome. And Leonore, please.
Hi, I'm Leonore Garnier. I'm Sustainability Project Manager at the French Federation of Couture and Fashion in France. We're a federation that brings together designers and fashion brands and luxury groups. It promotes French fashion culture, and I'm very excited to lead some of our projects around the Paris Fashion Week and some creative brands.
Wow. And Christina, please go ahead.
Yes. Hi, I'm Christina Cloverdance, Chief Sustainability Officer at Mastercard, and Mastercard is a payments company, and so you might think, we don't manufacture anything, and we're not in the extractives, industry. What role do we have to play with the environment? And I'm super excited to be part of this discussion today, because when you think about our business model as a payments company, we actually have a reach of nearly 3 billion cardholders. And when we can play a role of educating and incentivizing and enabling consumers to take positive action for the climate, I get super excited. So glad to be part of this group today.
Thank you. And we will also be joined in a little while by Sandra Noonan from Just Salad. So she had another panel she had to attend, but she'll join us as well just in a little while. So I thought we should start this discussion today with listening in on you that represent the brands in this panel and the different initiatives that you are currently undertaking. There are really cool stuff happening out there. So first, I'd like to ask you, Jad, to present your latest initiative, and also please share a bit of your background from Allbirds so that we understand where you come from and why you actually took those really actions to carbon label your products.
Great. Well, thank you. It's exciting to be here. So my background, I came out of the renewable materials industry. So we were making renewable materials that could replace oil and petroleum, which, as you know, is found in so many products out there. But we were always trying to convince other brands to use our materials. And then when the opportunity came to be one of the founding team members of Allbirds, this was a chance to now be the brand and no longer have to try to convince somebody else that this is something the world needs, that we could run as fast as we could and try to bring consumers great products that were also sustainable and not make them kind of choose one or the other. So that's my background, and we started very quickly with, as I said, a clear mission: better things in a better way. We launched with a merino wool-based casual sneaker. We've gone on to make eucalyptus-based sneakers, Brazilian sugarcane-based sneaker foam that we released to the world. And so we were making all these choices to try to make our products more sustainable. And it's really starting to catch on, and we're excited to see other brands doing it as well. But then the next step is, well, how do we make sense of these? How are we doing? What's the scorecard? How do we make better choices? And how do we sort through this kind of increasingly confusing world with different types of sustainability coming out? And we looked at our impact and said, footwear has a massive impact on carbon. The world needs action on carbon. That's something we can control and something we need to control. So we said carbon, it's not the perfect scorecard, but for us, we think it's the best scorecard we have. We also track lots of other environmental metrics, but carbon is truly our priority. And so first we tracked it ourselves internally, and then we said, hey, you know what? This really will take off if we can truly put this in the hands of the consumers. So it's our 4th year. We launched in 2016. And last year we enacted kind of a self-imposed carbon tax, where first we'd measured our carbon impact and we said, okay, we're going to keep working to try to get that down to 0. But in the short term, we're going to buy offsets, and we're going to invest in offsets to get to net 0 while we're doing all the hard work. So we're now officially a carbon neutral company, but we're putting our carbon labeling, which we launched this year, on all the products so that customers can see and start getting educated. And we think it should be as ubiquitous as having nutritional labels on food. And I know a lot of our panelists today feel the same way about that. So I'm excited about this discussion because right now we're pioneers in this, but we hope that this will be something that's just obvious and just the way you do business in the short-term future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's really, really great. And thank you for sharing. So I thought I'd turn to you, Leonor, so you could share some of the cool initiatives you've ongoing in the Federation, and also together with a lot of the large and small brands that you represent. And tell us about this impact tool that you are developing and why you're doing this.
Yeah, sure. So obviously we have quite a difference because we're not only just one company, we're about 100 companies. So it's quite different to bring all together their brands and their projects. So what I found interesting, Jed, when you mentioned about we want to have a scorecard, it's not perfect, but it's there. I think that's one of the key points at the moment. It's very difficult to compromise and to know which indicators are good at the moment. But I think to get kick-started and to get things going, you have to have a look at the big picture and then start the work on getting better. So as I mentioned, the Federation, we bring together a lot of designers brands. Some are smaller and some are very mature in those aspects, and some need to be given a hand and so as a result we we're developing this impact assessment tool, both for the industrial value chain and for something that we're much more famous for is the Paris Fashion Week. When I talk about the Paris Fashion Week, because it's starting next Monday, so obviously we're very excited about this. We're launching the first beta version. What I found interesting is that not only we're looking at in the events value chain of transports, at materials used and waste management, or something that's very big, then you can get better on if you have the metrics, and that didn't exist before. Another part that was very interesting is to look at is the communication and digital aspect. And obviously it's coming more and more important now. It's not one of the aspects, it's a multiplicator. So it's something to be we have to take into account in our metrics. When you said it wasn't a perfect method, there is much to talk about on this, but just to have a big picture, that's really important. Another key point is that being able for a company or for a brand or for a house is to measure and to have the metrics to get better. What I found interesting is that it's not only just looking at the carbon, but having really a holistic approach and looking at the entire life cycle of the product. And especially for creative products, it's not only the choice of materials that will have an impact, is by essence, we're a product that's durable and that can get repaired with great after-sale services. So the use phase, and I think there was a study recently by McKinsey that said it was 20% of the total impact, and that had really so looking at the use phase is something that's hard to define and hard to calculate, but it's something in our tool that we're trying to leverage and see what we can do with different indicators.
Indicators, I think that's something that goes across the whole line, and data, yeah, really, to see how you can't make this better than the data you have. So, but thank you. Really cool to hear that the fashion industry also is moving forward and that you're doing a hard job. So I turn to you, Jay, because I mean, you are, so Doconomy just launched in summer a tool to also help calculate carbon footprint from products. And during that launch, you actually picked that up and reached out, and you have an initiative ongoing, and you have a great story also ranging all back to 1940. So please share with us and tell us what's your ambition and what are you doing?
Yeah, first of all, I'm already feeling so inspired and want to ask 1,000 questions. So thank you for having me on the panel. This is really an honor. It's an interesting story because Amico started in World War II making chairs out of recycled aluminum because that's all that was available during war efforts. Fast forward down to the 80s and 90s, and it became more of a high-end design brand, still using recycled aluminum, but working with well-known designers, like Philippe Starck, Frank Gehry, to do projects that represented kind of like the pinnacle of their career in industrial design or architecture. From there, we started working with other recycled materials. So looking at recycled plastic in a collaboration with Coca-Cola, recycled polypropylene. But it's interesting because I don't think we ever could really wrap our heads around what metrics were best for those materials. And it's lucky to work in sustainability at Amico because I don't think manufacturing and environmentalism do not go hand in hand. If you're an environmentalist, you do not want to put more things in the world. So the whole ethos for Amico is really make something that belongs to be in the world and make it the best you can. So using waste materials, locally sourced, and something that someone will love their whole lifetime. And so everyone in Amico is really in sustainability, which is something very special. We've been trying over the past few years to figure out the best system for quantifying our environmental impact in all sorts of ways. And when we saw the Doconomy calculator, when it launched this summer, it lit such a spark that this should be something where it's accessible environmentalism. It shouldn't just be these companies that can sit on a pedestal and do an amazing thing, which is great, but it should be anyone should be able to measure their environmental impact and figure out how to improve. Because even if you're doing the best thing, like what Jad was saying, you can do the very best and there's still room for improvement. So for us, it was a really good chance to put numbers behind our products and also quickly assess the areas of impact and ways that we have the most ability to make changes. And then also to get consumers more acquainted with the idea of what a carbon footprint means. So the nutrition facts example is spot on. How do you make it so a carbon footprint is like calories? You understand what it means and you're able to do a quick assessment of that impact of whatever you're buying or eating. So really, we're just at the start. This launched Monday, and we're really excited for where it's going. And it's already had some really positive benefits, both internally and externally. And it feels like a snowball of good in a time of overwhelming bad news. So thank you.
Wow, a snowball of good. I think that's something we can all, take with us from this conversation. Thank you. Awesome. Really, really, really cool stuff you're doing. And also really good to know that, I think this is also really much about the collaborative approach and sharing, just the way we do now, to also stimulate how this actually could develop across different industries and verticals. So I thought I'll turn over to you, Christina. I mean, you represent a network, a really powerful network with global reach through your different customers. And what's the role that you see that Mastercard and an actor like you could play in this transition?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I agree. I mean, I get so excited and inspired by, each of your stories, and because this is bigger than any one of us, and it's going to take all of us. It's going to take it's going to take government, it's going to take business, it's going to take consumers. And so the way I see this is we are all trying to mobilize an ecosystem, and so it takes all. And what's also been mentioned is, we can't be paralyzed by, perfection, in the sense that there is no time to wait. We have to move. And so awareness is such a powerful first thing, that once being aware, then you can start to understand, and then you can start to make choices. And so that's where, I think companies, we have to first and foremost be focused on our own environmental footprint. You've got to do that, but then it extends to how within your business model can you have a positive effect on the planet. And so for Mastercard, Elena, as you mentioned, we don't actually issue cards to consumers. We issue them through the issuers and the banks. Consumers use their cards with merchants and retailers. And so this begins to have this whole network effect. And so our intent is, which we've actually done a lot of research and have found that 72% of millennials that we polled try to use products and services that lessen their environmental footprint. And so you hear those words in there of like, try to use products. Well, they're only going to be able to do that if they know which products actually have that effect. And then they also, same amount, 72% of millennials that were polled think replacing resources that have been taken from, the earth is important. So we know that's there, but we've got to be able to provide some information. And I too use all the time the calorie counter. I mean, when you go into Starbucks and it tells you that, that pastry has 580, calories, you're like, well, maybe I won't get that. But it's the other, example I often use is, remember before we had wearables that told us how many steps we were taking in a day? You didn't have any idea. Once you started to know, did it then begin to shift your behavior a bit? Now, is it going to change everybody's? No, but it might start to change. And so that's when I think that the transparency, and what Mastercard is doing is we are trying to actually help consumers by, we're partnering with Doconomy, and really excited about this idea of helping consumers understand the carbon footprint of their purchases. And when you can first begin to, understand that, and then you can actually take action to compensate from that, we're actually skipping a layer there that some of you on the panel are part of, which are the merchants and the retailers, and that bringing that transparency from your products to the this ecosystem, we're just going to help move and get there faster. So there's so much more I can talk about. I'm interested in listening and learning as well. But I do think that this is a ecosystem that we're all trying to move, and that the transparency of the 2030 calculator helps get us one step closer to it.
Yeah, wow. And I can only agree on that. I mean, also about the engagement, we'll get back to that in a while. And also the ecosystem approach, really, really important for all of us, I think, because, I mean, we can't do this alone. We're dependent on partnerships with our suppliers, with our customers through the whole value chain, and also with other colleagues out there, like this gathering today. So Mats, you're the person in this panel representing the most trusted environmental NGO in the world, actually. You're also representing science and fact-based decisions, and sometimes you step into a panel like this with the hat of the more skeptic person. So I'm really curious to know. Tell me, what do you see? And I know you've been engaged in this, these areas in those discussions for so long, also with your background from fast-moving consumer goods. Please tell us, what do you see? And is this something new, or what are your thoughts?
Well, I'll probably disappoint you, Helena, because I'm not going to be that skeptic. But what I think maybe it's worth saying, and sort of bringing that back to what we focus on at WWF. You probably heard about science-based targets for climate, which is one of the things that we've been part of developing and also been implementing over the last years. And I think sort of the notion around that concept is, of course, that you're more or less starting from the planetary boundaries. You got a finite space to sort of emit carbon into, like 500 gigatons or so, to fulfill the Paris Agreement. And I think the whole sort of thinking behind the science-based targets is that you as a company or as a country or whatever would have to limit yourself or sort of allocate your emissions to that available space, which is available to you. And I think you should sort of keep that in mind when you start talking about these things as well, because of course, we'd like to extend science-based targets into other areas like water or biodiversity and all the different themes. And there is a global network working with that as well. But I think the message is that, and also coming back to carbon labeling. I mean, if you go back to 27, you probably remember that Tesco set out to carbon label all their 70,000 products based on sort of fully fledged LCAs. That was, of course, a suicide mission, which I had to give up in 2012, realizing it couldn't be done. And also, it sort of resulted in some rather sort of difficult messages to the consumer, because you would have a carbon label on a pack of crisps containing maybe 60 grams of crisps, but then you had a carbon footprint of 120 grams. So people couldn't quite understand what 60 grams of crisp but 120 grams of carbon. And then how will that nudge people to make decisions? I think that's a tricky part, and it's been a tricky part all the time. So I think you need to sort of think hard about what are you trying to achieve, how do you best nudge people to get there, and is it sort of carbon labeling on individual products to make sort of a sensible choice on each occasion, or maybe some kind of carbon accounting, carbon account, if you like, where you sort of add your contributions over the year, which means that if you go to Thailand this year, you can't eat any meat for the rest of the year, or something like that, because that's really what counts. Sort of more or less managing like a science-based targets approach for yourself. Because at the end of the day, that's what counts. Because you could sort of fool yourself to be buying only like green products. This product is okay, green traffic light, and then the volume wouldn't really matter, and then you sort of lose track of the game anyhow. So I think that's an important sort of thought to have in this discussion as well, because I'm not quite sure that consumers will, on every buying occasion, make that kind of comparison. And even if they make that comparison, is that really a valid comparison for the overall choice? We haven't talked about kind of the complexity of LCAs, but at least my experience from dealing with that earlier is, of course, that if you're going to use that as a basis of comparison, you have to be very, confident about the quality of your data, because depending on how you define your functional unit or how you define your system boundaries, you could end up with any result of that LCA, and then the whole comparison thing sort of goes out the window. So I'm not being skeptical, but I think the most important thing is sort of think hard about what you want to achieve and how you best do that, because at the end of the day, you want people to start changing behavior. And you want them to go in the proper direction. I think that's the challenge.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think actually there's different kind of measures that needs to be put in place, and a carbon budget on an individual level is one way to go to also help people. And education and helping people make the right choices obviously is key. So let's get back to that with data boundaries and how you actually set those, and whether or not you need a perfect LCA or not. But I want to just stay a little while on Christina's input as well, and that you also shared, Mats, around the consumers. Do you, and then I'm thinking of Jad and Jay and also Leonore from the experience from the brands that you represent, do you see, is there an interest amongst your customers, and how do you support them? I mean, we've all been into this changing behavior, and that people, who the heck knows what a kilo of carbon actually is? I mean, how do we give them reference points so that they actually understand what this is all about? Would you gonna go first, Jad?
Yeah, sure. So we're seeing lots of great inbound interest, but it's still something that we feel constantly needs more explanation, more education, and ways to kind of keep drawing in interest, because there's always going to be that kind of really progressive set of your customers that will read everything you put out, but you really want to hit kind of you want to make a difference. You want to hit your entire customer set, and you want to bring them forward, give them something new to think about, bring their understanding forward. And for us, our brand voice is we try to be simple, clear, irreverent, and we have this New Zealand heritage. So one of the things we've done recently was we worked with one of the guys from Flight of the Conchords, an HBO comedy duo, and we've got a video now on our website and our Instagram and all of our social channels about what's in a carbon footprint. And we try to make it really digestible, humorous, and in our brand voice. And that's probably had more views and more uptake than any PDF we could put out or any kind of blog post we could write. So I think it's up to the brands to figure out a little bit about what works for them and what their customers get excited about. But that's something we think about all the time. It's not just, hey, we've done this thing, we've done the hard work, and now it's up to everybody else to come to us. We feel like there's the hard math and the hard analysis, but I think where you really make a difference is how do you get that out to everybody else. And we've got in our carbon offsets, we give the customers the choice to vote on which kinds of projects that they want us to invest in, and depending on where you put that in your follow-up email or somewhere on your mobile app, it can really matter as to how many people even see it. And so there's a whole science of how do we bring this how do we bring this education to our consumers, but also not get in the way of just kind of whatever the flow is for your product, right? You don't want to put a 100-page PDF in between you and saying, I just want those really cute pair of shoes. But you want to use that chance of having their attention as a way to bring them forward. So for us, we're always working on it. We don't have the answer, but for our voice, keeping it clear, simple, irreverent is what's been working so far.
Yeah, thanks. So then I think we should also listen in with actually Sandra. I know that you joined. So we would like to hear, and I think actually you've also got a really interesting view on this with reference points. So would you please just, introduce yourself, of course, and Just Salad quickly, because we've got 15 minutes left, and then share also your view on reference points and what your customers actually think of your initiative and your products.
Sure, thank you. I'm Sandra Noonan, Chief Sustainability Officer at Just Salad. We're a 41-unit restaurant location, mostly along the East Coast of the United States, and we've launched carbon labels on our menu digitally this past Thursday, right in time for Climate Week. And yeah, Helena, thanks for the question. We very much like Allbirds think about this in terms of how do you orient the consumer to process this information that today is not very familiar to most people. What is a kilogram of carbon dioxide equivalent, and how is that relevant as I think about what item to order on the Just Salad menu? And so what we have looked at is this great academic research that says the average greenhouse gas emissions from the daily US diet are 4.6 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent. And to me, that is very analogous to a nutrition label saying a benchmark 2,000 calorie limit is how, you know, we're presenting this information to you. So if we know that Americans emit 4.6 kilograms on average of carbon dioxide equivalent through their daily food choices, we also know that G20 nations need to cut per capita dietary emissions in half to keep global warming with 1.5 degrees Celsius. Then we can start as consumers really understanding the climate impacts of our food choices. And so Just Salad has created assets that we think are fun and engaging for consumers that tell them, look, 4.6 is the average today. If you want to do better than that, if you want to eat under that amount, then we invite you to do so. And we're inviting you to do so by giving you what we call a climatarian menu that you can order from. And this climatarian menu displays our lowest emissions items. So for example, our Feisty Fiesta Bowl has 0.41 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent. So the consumer then says, okay, that's way below 4.6. And we go one step further, and this is where I'll pause. We then, when you click on that item, you see your nutrition facts and you see the carbon footprint. And then we tell you, hey, by the way, this item has emissions that are 90% lower than a quarter-pound beef patty. And that's our reference food for you. So if you're still struggling to make sense of it, we're using the beef patty as a reference point across our menu. We don't serve beef, so we're comparing it to something outside our menu where you can go, okay, that's a good comparison. Now I can kind of contextualize this number.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of doing it, also helping the consumer understand. And I think all of us can contribute to also find those comparisons to add to the products and the concepts that we launch. So let's move into the very interesting topic of boundaries and how this calculation actually can be done. And so I've also been engaged in this field for very long, but together with my colleagues at Doconomy, I've actually learned that perfect cannot be the enemy of good. So if we want to move forward, we need to find a way, and we need to just get going and agree on some things, but not on all things. And maybe it's better to start than try to do the perfect, calculation from start. But what are your thoughts on this, Jay? Did you struggle when you set the boundaries, when you research for data, or how was the process for you?
Definitely. It's a really interesting question. Coming from an engineering background, I want all of the data to be perfect, exact, and very thorough. And it turns out when you get closer and closer to an exact carbon footprint, there's so many different situations that you're playing out on the tail end of a product that it's really hard to be exact. So for a chair, we're measuring cradle to gate, and this was a tough concession to make, but at that gate level, you're at the factory and the chair could either be sent overseas, and you could be sending to a museum, in Paris, or you could be sending chairs locally to a university in Pennsylvania, or actually a few Just Salads restaurants in the US that have Amico chairs. And it gets so complex that you're diluting the quality of the rest of your data. And I don't want it to be a scapegoat. It shouldn't be, we aren't measuring that because we don't think it should be exact as a way to get out of it. But it's more of how can we make this as clear as possible and as exact as possible with what we have. And I think that's a tough choice to make, but keeping it pared down and specific is really crucial to making sure that the numbers make sense and are accurate representations.
Yeah, and I know we also touched upon this, Leonor, when we had our, prep meeting ahead of this panel. You were also discussing the limits and how you actually find the right data. Would you share how you work with that in the Federation of Haute Couture and Fashion in France?
Definitely. Actually, all of this, there's something that I'm quite proud of in France, is that there's a law that passed on circular economy and anti-waste, and that is now, it's going to be, well, at the moment it's voluntary, but maybe tomorrow it's going to be obligatory to have green claims on your products. It goes hand in hand with the European project to have, at a European level, a policy that says that all products, including textile products, so in my case, that's what interests me, to have an environmental tag. As a result of that, there's a group that's called the Technical Secretariat of the Product Environmental Footprint Method. So it's quite a long word. Just to say that we're all of us representing a part of the market, of the fashion market. So we're us with the fashion and creative brands, but also with more open, large public fast fashion brands and sports brands are all gathered together to agree on a methodology and on common points to measure our environmental impact of our products. And this would lead, hopefully, to an environmental tag. So now, obviously, there's a lot of questions and we don't agree on everything because as a result of picking the right functional unit, the number of washes for different kind of products and their functionality, etc. Having said that, it's still really interesting so that we can have something to compare it with. I don't think we can compare everything. I don't think all the consumers want to compare everything, but to have a very simple grade like A, B, C, D, E, the same way it works for electric appliances in France or in Europe, for example, is something that we can think about. And I think it gives kind of the first direction. So as a result, the Federation, what we're trying is, our products is by definition quite different from the rest of the market. And in terms of volumes, as you mentioned, it's very, very different. But it's very important to us that we are part of this group as well, so that we can sort of have the same indicators and the same rules of comparison.
Yeah, I think this topic can actually make up for a week-long conversation. So each and every one of you will reach back and we'll have a week conversation later. No, but really, time flies when you have fun. So I think we should just try to wrap up because we're approaching actually our last minutes. But I would like each and every one of you to give us 3 sentences short, what you have done when we meet here a year from now. So in Climate Week 2021, when we do another session like this, what have you achieved? That's something that I'm very curious about. So I thought, Jad from Allbirds, you can go first. You're muted, sorry.
Great. Well, I didn't use up one of my 3 sentences then. I guess I can start over. A year from now, we will have released more consumer-facing content to educate folks on what's in a carbon footprint. We will also have released more content and updates about strategic initiatives to lower the inherent carbon footprint of our products. So getting that true inherent footprint down to 0, and in general, try to bring our customers along to this very important topic while still keeping them entertained and delighted, because that's really what goes viral is keeping this fun, interesting, and something that you want to tell all your family and friends about.
Great, cool. So Christina, what are you going to do?
Sure. Well, I hope a lot of things, but I'll give you 3 thoughts. One, I agree. There's some brand work that, from Mastercard, with the scale and the influence that we have, that I hope a year from now I can talk about how the things that we've done to begin to shift consumer consumption to a more sustainable consumption, because we know that if, as society, we continue on the consumption patterns that we're on, we're going to deplete the resources of the natural resources of the planet. So one, I'll come back and talk about those examples. And two ways that, hope to do that is one by rolling out our partnership with Doconomy and how we are going to bring to the consumer and give accountability to a consumer to understand their carbon impact of their purchases and be able to actually compensate for those. And then one of the network effects that we are doing, which we've also launched, is the Priceless Planet Coalition, committing to plant 100 million trees over 5 years with our partners. And with that model, for us, it's not just philanthropic, but it's an engagement model with our partners. So potentially with some of you, we will be engaging consumers so that when they use their Mastercard through these different engagement models, a tree will be planted to compensate. So those are three things, and but excited to do many more as well.
A lot of activities coming. So Jay, please share with me, what are you going to do? And now we need to keep this short because we are actually moving into the final minute.
Okay, 3 sentences. One,
yes.
Over 90% of the products we want full carbon labeling using Doconomy calculator. 2, we want to address the problems that come out of that. So looking at problem areas, and right now for us, it's looking like energy, so switching to renewables. And 3, offering a proof of concept of labeling all objects, not just furniture, and also proving out that to be an environmentally friendly product does not mean that you have to skimp on strength or durability or aesthetics. You can have something beautiful and meaningful and also low carbon footprint that lasts forever.
Cool. Yeah, I completely agree. Sandra, share with us.
Quickly, yes. By next year, we hope to have launched a behavioral study with leading universities on the impact of our carbon label on food choices. 2, we hope to have launched another plant-based protein in addition to Beyond Beef, which is on our menu. 3, we hope to have the carbon labels on our physical menu boards in our stores as well as digitally. And 4, I hope we can launch some kind of partnership with like-minded brands. So I guess I'll just have to go look for those.
You can start here today. That's awesome. Cool. This is a starting point. So Leonor.
Yeah, very quickly, my 3 points. It's just continue on letting sustainability foster innovation. So by launching our assessment and co-design tool, is both for the industrial value chain and the events value chain for Paris Fashion Week. I bring that to 1 and 2, and really help smaller brands and multi-medium brands be able to have help on this. And the 3rd point is keep working on the PEF method and bringing together to have a really good environmental performance calculator at a European level.
Wonderful. Mats, I saved the best to last.
Thank you very much. No, I think 3 points. One is that we have been able to get sort of a bigger bulk of companies to set science-based targets, including the financial industry, which is sort of in pipeline now. I think that's going to have a huge effect on underlying investments for sure. The second thing is that we hopefully will be able to sort of raise the awareness and the sense of urgency around biodiversity to at least the same level as climate, because that's at least as an urgent issue as climate is.
Yeah.
And then I think the third one is that we've been able as an organization to contribute to consumer relevant nudging tools, be there carbon labels or a combination of things, but really so that could drive a relevant change in behavior. I think that's the biggest challenge we face.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Wow. Guys, this has been so amazing. Having the opportunity to talk to each and every one of you. I want to thank you for taking the time to prepare and also being here pretty early morning or late evening. Thank you so much. I encourage you and everyone that actually has been watching this to continue this dialogue. I encourage you to also reach out to those brands. Maybe we can see this as a starting point for future collaboration. we have a huge mission ahead of us in terms of reducing carbon dioxide emissions. And we've been listening today to some real life examples of how this can be done. And so thank you to each and every one of you. And we'll talk again. We'll meet in a year from now, and then we can do a follow-up. I think that will be awesome. So thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.